Welcome to another episode of Walk the Walk. Today, I'm joined by Marla Cornelius, an independent consultant and coach working with nonprofit leaders committed to social justice. With over 25 years of experience, Marla brings a strengths-based approach to leadership and strategy. She's been working with our students, faculty, and staff as they complete the Clifton Strengths Assessment, helping them discover and apply their natural talents. Today, we'll be talking about leading with purpose, staying grounded in your values, and using your strengths to make an impact. Welcome to Walk the Walk, where we go beyond talking the talk. I'm Scott McLarty, head of Providence High School in Burbank, California, and in this show, we talk out of school about growing up and being a grown-up, about learning and leading for a better world. Let's get into it. Marla Cornelius, welcome to Walk the Walk.
Hello, so nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm really excited about the conversation we're about to have, and I always like to start these with the same question. Tell us a little bit about your high school experience.
Oh my goodness, my high school experience. Well, I went to high school not that far from here in Woodland Hills. You know, it was mixed, I'll be honest.
You're not alone in that.
Yeah. There was aspects of it that, you know, looking back, I really enjoyed. My best friend from high school is still my absolute best friend. So that's something to be cherished, right?
Absolutely.
And I have achiever in my top 10. Strengths. We'll talk about that. And so getting a good grade meant a lot to me. But I also, and so I enjoyed that process. I enjoyed learning and feeling immediately or seeing immediately the rewards of that. Like, yes, I got an A on that. I put in the work and I got an A. What I didn't love so much is, you know, some of the social pressures were tough. There was some of that. But by and large, it was a pretty decent experience. Yeah. My mom and dad were super supportive. They were great parents and, you know, in terms of helping me get through things and stuff like that. So that was good.
Yeah. Were you really involved in high school?
You know, not really actually. Like student government or sports or that kind of thing. Yeah, not so much. That wasn't me so much. I do not have winning others over. I'm going to keep doing this.
And I do. We'll talk about that.
Oh, yeah. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah, so that is not in my top 10. And if
Got
that
it.
was, I probably would have joined more of those kinds of, you know, things. Yeah.
That's great. So how did you go from that high school experience to what you're doing now?
Yeah, it was completely planned. I'm kidding. Not at all. Yeah, like so many people, right? Well, when I got out of high school, I went to college, went to Berkeley. I did a moment in Northridge, but ended up in Berkeley and was a gender studies major. And that took me into wanting to work in an organization that was working for something related to women's rights or what have you. So when I started there as a volunteer, I just started getting really interested in what is this notion of nonprofits and how do they work and what is this? And as a volunteer, I was on the rape crisis line at this one organization. They invited me to join their board of directors and I was like 24 years old.
Wow.
And I said yes, and then went home and said, what does that even mean, you know? But I got really interested in that process and in that structure of nonprofits and what the sector is. So fast forward, I ended up getting a job at an organization working in their training department, training other leaders and managers of nonprofits. And then I got into the art, let's call it, of consulting. I went back to school, got my master's degree in nonprofit administration, and then I became a strengths coach, which I know is what we're going to be really focusing on in our conversation today. And because I really found that in my consulting work and in my training work with other nonprofit leaders, it was such a useful tool to figure out, who am I? Why am I here? What am I trying to do? And the strengths is one tool to help decipher that and figure out, or to have those insights and to be reflective and come to some of those conclusions about all of those questions about who we are.
Absolutely.
So I really loved, I'm a total dork about it.
Well, we'll have an opportunity to nerd out together about it. But I also think that we could probably, you know, tie in some of that previous experience. You know, I'm very much interested in governance as someone who reports to a board.
Right.
And is a trustee myself at another independent school. I've been a member of a board of directors and a board chair at another nonprofit up in Northern California. And it is a very interesting sector, and there are a lot of big challenges in the world of governance that institutions are facing. And I imagine that a strengths-based approach could be very helpful in those contexts.
Yeah, you're very right.
Well, great. So When in that journey did you really start thinking about leadership and working specifically with nonprofit leaders?
Yeah. It's a good question. So I was at this one organization that was a nonprofit consulting and training firm doing capacity building, some technical stuff. So, if you're in accounting, how do you use QuickBooks and,
Sure.
things like that. How do you supervise staff if you're a new manager? So some technical things. But what we realized, and this is a number of years ago, what we realized when I was there is the management, absolutely people need help with that. But what about the leadership? And you can manage yourself so far, but you need to couple that and blend that with also leadership skills, or you won't be as effective as a manager. So nobody, I think, just manages nor just leads if you're in an organization.
Yep.
I think we maybe lean one way or another a little bit more, management with leadership or leadership with management, but that was a missing piece. And so we did a bunch of curriculum development and did some research and started some other programs at this place I was at to develop more programs specifically for nonprofit leaders that were really focused on that piece of it. Because they're in nonprofits, right? They're running organizations. By definition, nonprofits are in the business of change. Changing something in the environment around us, right? Making some positive impact, which by definition is a change. And so how are we going to be effective if we're not approaching those challenges, societal challenges of all kinds, without leadership?
Absolutely. So let's unpack that a little bit more. When you see managers managing but not leading, what's missing?
The big picture. The big picture, the vision, right? So leadership, right? And I know you know this, but so this is how I think about it. Leadership is that where are we going? Why are we going there? What's the purpose? Very purposeful. And what's the impact we're trying to have? And how do I incentivize, mobilize, inspire folks to come with me? And then the management is, okay, great, we got that big picture. That's the eagle view, the leadership. The management is more like, okay, now how are we going to get there? We know where we're going, big picture, steps, tactics. How do we organize staff to get there? What's the budget for that? What is the work plan? What's all the pieces, right, that need to go with it? So of course we need both. We need both, and they need to work together.
Yeah, absolutely. Are we over-managed and under-led, I guess is my question.
Interesting question. Are we over-managed and under-led? I think some groups are. I think it's a constant work in progress to get it right. Like you're never done. Yeah,
it's a never-ending process.
Right. So you never say, "Oh, I've developed myself as a leader. I'm done." Or I'm a great manager.
Check.
I'm done. Right. It doesn't work that way because, of course, the environment around us evolves. The forces that are shaping the work that we do is changing all the time.
Yeah.
And so, therefore, we have to adapt too. So, it's an orientation, not a destination. You're never going to arrive there, but you want to orient towards what's my leadership vision, my purpose. Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And what am I trying to accomplish?
Now, you just said something I think was really important, probably multiple things that are important, but the one that jumped out at me is you used the word adapt.
Yeah.
And you talked about how there are so many aspects of the context within which we're doing our work in nonprofits that is changing rapidly.
Right.
And the need to adapt and be flexible is probably greater than ever, at least in our lifetimes.
Yeah.
How do you talk with leaders, in particular leaders who have maybe a group of employees or a set of teams that really have a hard time with adapting, where all of these changes are really framed as threats, and it's really easy to just give up or to feel like there's really nothing in our control anymore. So how do you coach leaders who are trying to move organizations forward and have that positive impact and change on the world when there's just sometimes just such sense of overwhelm due to so much change?
Gosh, that's a big question.
Yeah,
it's a big question. It's an important one. You said sense of control. I think that's a piece of it. So a couple thoughts. One is that people typically aren't resistant to change. They're resistant to loss. And so if I need to make a change, if I need to adapt, what am I saying goodbye to? What do I have to let go of? I have to let go perhaps of a sense of competence. I knew how to do this job, and now it's changed, and like the rug has been pulled out from underneath me. Or my organization has grown tenfold. I see that a lot. And now instead of managing a team of 20, I've got 150 people here. So I need to figure out how to lead differently with this,
That level of complexity going way up.
Goes way up. So part of it, I think, is helping people understand, well, we'll talk about strengths. What strengths do I bring to that? What can I let go of? But not just to let go of it. So if I let go of this, it's to make space for something else. And so it's a bit of a mindset shift. So coaching is really good for that. Helping people understand, what exactly are you afraid of? What exactly are you going to lose? But what will you gain? Okay, let's talk about that too. But also, I think one of the things that's really different, at least in my practice in consulting and training and coaching, a few years ago, we would do strategic plans. I'm not saying we don't still do them. And, we would create this 5-year plan. I mean, who knows what's going to happen next year, let alone 5 years from now?
Yeah, we used to call them long-range plans, too. That's even more absurd.
I mean, there's maybe some exceptions to that rule around people who need to plan that far out. But for most of us, so it's just one example of the environment is so uncertain. Things are changing so much. We cannot read the tea leaves about 5 years from now, let alone next year. So let's not pretend we can. Instead, let's get really clear on impact. What are we here to do? That is evergreen. That's our North Star, right? And let's keep our eye on that while we adapt about how we're going to get there. Because if we had a 5-year plan that says, here's how we're going to get to that place, it's going to change.
Yep.
Budgets come and go, people come and go, funders come and go, priorities come and go. So we have to be nimble in saying we're still headed to the same North Star, but we have options about how we get there. And then the planning becomes iterative instead of long-term. And we do more annual planning and adaptation and scenario planning. And that's also a thing that I think helps people a lot, is if I can do scenario planning, that gives me a little bit of the comfort. It's not, I have no idea where we're going. It's, I don't know exactly where we're going, but here's 3 very viable options. Let's tease each of these out. And then we have a sense of, okay, if we get 6 months in and this is true, cool, let's keep going. If everything's changed, okay, let's take a look at scenario B. Does that serve us?
Yeah, I love that. I've found in recent years that scenario planning reduces fear.
It does.
Too, because rather than negative scenarios being stuck in our head where we can ruminate on them, we can objectify them. We put them down on paper, and then we can actually look at them objectively and say, oh, well, what can we do in response to that if that proves to be true?
Yeah.
A moment ago, you talked about how the key in volatile moments and times like we're in now is to get really clear on the impact you want to have. What's the change you want to see in the world? And I'm really proud of the fact that our new strategic plan, Learning and Leading for a Better World, really does that. We're not going to focus on 10 different things. We're focused on learning deeply, leading bravely, living purposefully. And we're going to focus on that. Yeah, we talk about it 2030, the next 3 to 5 years, but it's really every year we're going to find new ways of learning deeply, leading bravely, and living purposefully. One of the things that we're launching as part of Leading Bravely is this new Providence Leadership Institute, and it's funded through a really prestigious grant through the Edward E. Ford Foundation that our community supported. And now we have this institute, and one of the first things that we're doing under the banner of that institute is actually the reason why you're here. And the reason is because we're trying to bake in a few basic assumptions into the philosophy of the institute.
Great.
One of them is that leadership is intergenerational, and it has to be these days. And I want young people and parents and faculty and staff and alumni to be co-learners in the work of the Institute. Yeah. Another thing is that we believe, and we talk a lot about this, that you can lead from anywhere, that leadership is not primarily about position or title. It's more about disposition and behavior.
Oh, I love that.
And thirdly, that leadership of others, if it's going to be effective, begins with leadership of self. And I know you talk a lot about leading self, and that's just, it seems to be deeply aligned with one of our fundamental approaches. Tell us a little bit about leading self, and then we'll talk about what you're doing and how you're working with our students here.
Okay, great. First of all, congratulations.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Yeah, I bet it is. Leading self. To me, it's about purpose, self-awareness, and I guess I was going to say intention, which is about purpose. And it's also about humility in a huge way, right? So leadership to me is not the end. It's the means to an end, right? What are we trying to do? I couldn't agree more with you that it's not about position. People have leadership positions and they have responsibilities due to that role that they formally play. That doesn't guarantee they are a leader, though.
That's for sure.
Right?
We've all reported to someone who
yes,
has
we
a
have.
title and is not leading at all.
Exactly. So we know by experience that leadership is a process.
Yeah.
It's not a position. And I think what's so important about that is that we, and you're working with students, that we communicate that. I think they know that, but I think that, the importance of communicating that everybody is a leader.
Yeah.
But what's so important about that too is there's not one archetype of a leader. There's so many. And everybody will lead authentically to who they are to be effective. Because if you're not leading authentically, everybody sees that. And your credibility tanks. Tanks. Because you're not being honest. You're not being truthful. You're not being genuine. So the only hope any of us have to be good leaders is to be ourselves and to lead authentically, uniquely as we are. So leading self, coming around to answer your question, leading self is, who am I? What values do I have? How do they get expressed in my day-to-day behavior? And I have intentions around those. So if I have a value of equity and inclusivity, let's say, then my behavior is going to be one where I correct things that are not equitable, and I work to include a broad range of people who are going to be impacted by this change in what I'm doing. So there's the value, but then there's how it's expressed behaviorally, right? So part of leading self is knowing what my values are, but also what my strengths and my weaknesses are. So I can bring my strengths to bear, and I can contribute powerfully to whatever it is I want to do, whether that's leadership in the community, or whether that's leadership in my family or with my friends, or at school, or whatever it may be, or in my community. So I need to understand who I am and what I'm trying to bring so that I can do that more powerfully and be more intentional. So it's not this subconscious thing I'm doing. I'm being quite intentional about it. But it's also being able to, so I think about leading self as sort of, you can't lead anybody else if you can't lead yourself, right? So you have to start there.
Yeah.
And then once I have a sense of who I am, and it's a work in progress, I can set some intentions for myself so that when I'm not my best self, and that's happens to all of us,
Absolutely.
maybe more times than we hope to admit, when I'm not my best self, I can say, oh, there's me doing that thing. There's me not being inclusive. That's not who I want to be, because I have a leadership vision, I have a leadership integrity. And so let me apologize if I've caused harm, say how I'm going to do better, and get myself back on track. But if I never said what my intentions were in the first place, it's so much easier to just keep falling off that track, So part of that too, if I have a sense of leading self, and there are competencies around that. That's the other thing I want to think about too, or talk about, is what are the competencies for leading self? It's things like understanding my strengths and my weaknesses, understanding my triggers, right? Like what's something that just kind of gets me?
When are you guaranteed to get the worst out of me versus the
When
best out of me?
I love the way you put that. It's so helpful. When are you guaranteed to get the worst out of me? And instead of me just reacting, whether it's positively or negatively, it's that pause 2 seconds in the brain. Wait a minute. How do I want to respond to this? Right? So that's self-regulation, not to be fake, but just to be in control.
Yeah.
And then how do I understand you, if we're working together, what makes you tick? And there's different competencies for leading others: listening, developing others, relationship building, collaboration. So I think about almost like concentric circles. What are the competencies I need to lead self, lead others, lead an organization? And now we have yet again another set of competencies in the community where now you have to lead without authority. Because here you have a title, and so you have some leadership that comes with that. But you go out in community, you're collaborating, you're part of a coalition, let's say. You're nobody's boss. So you have to lead through influence, and it takes different competencies.
One that you mentioned earlier, you started with the list of purpose, self-awareness, and humility.
Thank you for bringing me back. Yeah.
And humility, I think we could pause and unpack that a little bit. In my experience as a positional leader, I feel a great tension between ego and humility.
Tell me what you think of the difference. What's the difference to you?
So
this is interesting to me.
I think in my experience and in talking with others in similar roles, it's very easy to be flattered in the role.
Yeah.
You never know, really. You never know if people are being honest or telling you what they think you want to hear. Once you're in a role like this for a while, you get emails all the time from headhunters like, you feel so wanted and needed sometimes. And I find that every time I indulge that, I lose my ability to activate those other competencies.
That's
well.
so interesting. Yeah.
And I find that my ego behaves like one of those trick birthday candles that every time you blow it out, it comes back. It's sort of like you have to commit ego side and then know that it's going to pop back up. And I find it to be a really interesting cycle to pay attention to.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and what is it that's prompting my ego, or why do I not feel particularly humble in this moment?
Right.
And I have been humbled so many times by my inability to manage that tension well all the time. And no one can manage it well all the time, or any of these things well all the time. So how do you think about ego and humility, and to pursue higher positions, to have aspirations for yourself and your family? There's a little bit of healthy ego in that too, right?
The way you described that muscle you're building of being self-aware, ego, humility, and as you're moving through the world and in this position, catching yourself and saying, was that me flattering myself, or was that, or not? That is leading self. So I just want to make that connection, right? So if you or anyone lets oneself be flattered for the sake of flattery, then leadership becomes the end, right? It's about me. And look, you're giving me attention. I'm great. Here I am, the head of this organization. And then the conversation stops. That's not humility.
It's no longer about the impact you want to have, the change you want to see in the world.
That's right. Yeah. So leadership to an end. Why do you have this job? Why did you take this job? Actually, why did you take this job?
So many reasons. Where to start? So this is my second headship.
Okay.
And my first one was in San Francisco. And it was a really difficult experience. Really difficult experience. I learned a ton, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done professionally. And long story short, I only stayed in the role for 2 years, and even though it was a pretty old school, it was celebrating its 65th anniversary that first year. 6 months after I left, they announced the school was permanently closing.
Ooh.
And I didn't know when I took the role that it was essentially a dying school. And that was really hard in so many ways.
I bet.
And I was lucky enough, privileged enough to be able to take a little bit of time after that and to really think, deeply about my why, and do I want to stay in schools? Do I want another job like that? And upon some pretty serious reflection and conversations with friends and family, I did reconnect with my why, and I did choose to put myself out there again. And I'm so grateful that I did, and I'm so grateful that I landed in a community like Providence. And I ended up applying for probably 12 or 13 roles like this. And I didn't, if I'm really honest with myself, I didn't really want any of the other roles until I found this one.
Great.
They all had the same title. They were all very different schools, but there was something about the mission and the values, the culture of trust and authenticity that I encountered from the very beginning of this process. And so there was a deep resonance between the values and culture of this school and my own personal values, the type of Catholic school that this is, the type of community that we foster, the kind of impact that we want to have in the world, the heritage of the Sisters of Providence and their history was all so attractive to me because it resonated with who I am as a person, not even just as a leader, just as a human in this world.
Right, right. So I think what I'm hearing you say, but you'll tell me if I'm not getting it right, is this position at this school, not any position at any school, this position at this school allowed you the opportunity to have an impact because the school's values and culture and what it's doing aligns with your personal values and culture and what you want to do.
Yes.
So you can have, this is a good place for you to be able to bring to bear your talents, your strengths, your leadership on this greater purpose, your why. So to me, that's how we get out of the danger zone of it being about ourselves. And that is humility, because it's not about us. That doesn't mean that we don't get satisfaction, but the satisfaction is related to seeing, like, oh my gosh, look what we did there.
It's a very different kind of satisfaction.
There.
It's actually more lasting.
Oh yeah.
Because it's not a dopamine hit kind of satisfaction.
That's a good point.
It's like the difference between happiness and joy. If happiness is sort of subjective contentment because this happened, someone said this to me, or I got this, versus joy, which, like, even in the hard times,
right,
I feel really good about getting up in the morning and coming here, whatever the challenge is, whatever the opportunity is that, walks into the office or comes across my desk over the course of a day. There's that deeper sense of meaning and purpose and joy. Right.
And when you're able to bring your talents, as I say, bring them to bear and have them help you contribute in a way that, yes, will have an impact, but also is internally motivating, it's joyful. But if it's drudgery, right? I mean, because there's other people who are also working towards the same impact you're having here, because it's collective.
Absolutely.
You're not doing it alone. They have a different job here at Providence. And there's a lot of jobs here at Providence. You're probably like, oh my goodness, no thank you.
Yeah, I would never do that.
I would never do that. But that doesn't, but they are, thank
goodness. I hear from people all the time, I would never want your job.
Right. And so I think that's also what's really cool is, we get to think about, it's not just that I want to have that impact. I need to have that impact in a way that I can bring my talents to bear, because that will be internally energizing for me and joyful for me, versus going home and saying, oh, yeah, we did some good stuff today, but man, I'm burned out.
Yeah, I know so many people. My own brother and I have had similar conversations over the years. We grew up in the same house, right?
Oh,
same influences.
That doesn't mean you had the same experience, right?
Yeah, correct. And we didn't make the same decisions, and siblings never do.
Right.
And he went sort of business, sales, tech route, and started making a lot. I'm 4 years older. I have more degrees. I have all those sorts of things. But he made a lot more money a lot earlier than I did. And I had to fight a little bit of like resentment. Like, I'm doing meaningful work and he's the one making the money. But he would always say, yeah, but I hate my job.
Oh, that's
really
sad. I get
nothing out of it. And you love your job and you're energized by it. And when I was younger, it was harder for me to be okay with that. It felt like I was really giving up something that he had. There was also brotherly competition and stuff in that. But as I've gotten older and I have worked on self-awareness, I am so grateful that I made those decisions.
Yeah. You know what strikes me about your story about your brother is you don't have to do sort of what's obviously impact work.
Yeah.
Like, now I do work exclusively in the nonprofit sector, so I feel so lucky that impact is right there. But, and this is what I hope for your brother. Have your brother call me. What I would hope for
He just got a
everybody-
new job. It's going really well.
Oh, he's good now.
Yeah,
Okay, good. He's found his own way. Okay. But you could still have this wonderful impact on how you do your job, no matter what you're doing, or how you relate to people, how you support others on your team. So I think that's really important too, is you don't have to be head of a school or be in the nonprofit sector or be in any of those more obvious, I would say, industries or professions to make a positive impact and be happy doing it.
Absolutely. And I think that gets at
Or joyful.
that basic assumption that we talked about earlier that's built into the Institute is anyone can lead from any position.
That's right.
Any positionality in a family, in an institution, in a neighborhood. There is the possibility of leading, of having a positive impact on the people around us. And that's a really empowering thing.
It is.
Thanks for listening to part 1 of my conversation with Marla Cornelius. Join me next week for part 2, where we'll go deeper into how the Clifton Strengths Assessment empowers us to be more confident, have stronger relationships, and lead bravely. Please support us by following, subscribing, and visiting us at providencehigh.org/walkthewalk, where you can sign up for our email list to join the conversation. Thanks again, and see you next time.